Makatauka and you're watching The World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump has announced an immediate 25% tariffs on countries doing business with Iran. This aims to pressure Tehran as protests intensify in Iran. At least 648 killed in Iran's protests as per a US rights group. This comes as security forces crack down on nationwide protests there. US President Donald Trump will meet Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado at the White House on 15th of January. The talks follow US strikes on Caracas and the capture of Nicolas Maduro. EU Ambassador to Jordan Pierre-Christophe Chatsivas with ambassadors of EU member states and Jordan's Minister of Transport Nidal Katamin have discussed the ways to enhance cooperation between Jordan and the EU in the transport sector, while Jordan highlighted the importance of the recent Jordan-EU summit. In Syria, government is reopening roads, especially in Aleppo, where intensive operations have started to remove earth berms as part of a plan to restore civilian movement in areas liberated from the militants. As Syrian Civil Defense Director Ammar Abdurrahman saying the campaign aims to help to return to normal life. The UK Special Representative for Syria, Anne Snow, and her delegation met with Syria's Minister of Information, Hamza al-Mustafa, to discuss prospects for cooperation in the media sector, while both sides exchanged views on the impact of past years on Syrian society and the need to expand global cooperation. Pete Hegseth has announced that the integration of Elon Musk's Grok AI into US military networks, aiming to boost innovation in defense. The collaboration underscores the importance of rapid technological advancements to maintain America's edge in modern warfare. Somalia has cancelled all agreements with the United Arab Emirates, accusing Abu Dhabi of undermining its sovereignty, national unity, and political independence amid claims the UAE tacitly supported Israel's recognition of Somaliland as an independent state. Now for this hour, we start with US President Donald Trump has announced that the United States will implement a 25% tariff on any nation engaging with trade with Iran. This move is aimed at increasing pressure on the Islamic Republic, coinciding with escalating protests and reports of a severe crackdown. The administration of the United States President Donald Trump has continued to threaten Iran with military attacks, saying that airstrikes are one of many options being explored as widespread protests put the Iranian government under growing pressure. Trump, who bombed Iranian nuclear facilities in June and has previously threatened Tehran with further strikes if it does not come into greater alignment with US demands, had used the government's harsh crackdown on protesters as a pretext for further military attacks against the longtime US foe. Meanwhile, Trump has also stated that he plans to speak with billionaire Elon Musk about restoring internet in Iran, where authorities have blacked out internet services for 4 days amid ongoing anti-government protests. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Adrian Calamel. He's a terrorism scholar, joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Mr. Calamel, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, as Iran's protests intensify, what is US's role in, or what is US's motive in, putting tariffs of 25% to any countries engaging with Iran on trade?
Well, first of all, good to see you, Asuma, and good morning to you and all your viewers. It's Trump. He's tightening the noose. That's what he's doing. he's already got the maximum pressure campaign in place, and we've seen that playing out with several ghost fleets of sanctioned oil. He's going to ratchet up the pressure on countries that are in the region that do any type of trade with them up to 25%. So that's the economic part of it. But when you look at the carnage in the streets, and I know the death tolls are putting them, I heard estimates 500, but really the estimates are, if you look at true estimates, they're north of 3,000. And I know that may sound alarming, an alarmist claim, but it's not. And I would say 3,000 at this point is a rather low estimate. I've seen people estimate as high as 6,000 at this point. So it becomes a question when, how much longer can this go on? How much bloodshed can the world witness without doing something about it? Because the Iranian people, the one thing that they've come out in the streets and they do not have weapons. Their weapon is communication with the outside world, what the regime tries to clamp down on.
Right, and we know that Elon Musk's maybe the Starlink, was it the internet company? Yeah, maybe that is in the talks for providing connection to Iranian people, right? So how effective will this all be in terms of pressuring Iranian government?
Well, the Iranian government, the regime really is, they've done this to themselves. They've really dug themselves into this corner based on just brutalizing the population, terrorizing them for 47 years, keeping 95% of the population in living paycheck to paycheck or at the poverty line or below. There's a extreme water crisis that's taking place right now. Starlink, as far as that coming in, communications, that can certainly help with organizing and protesting. But again, I keep on coming back to, and I've heard that there's been 5 to 6. Last night I heard there were 6 defections from IRGC units. I think one thing, it doesn't have to be an expansive military strike, but if the United States were to hit one of these besieged bases, which are units that kind of are the below the IRGC, they're the street thugs that ride around on motorcycles and they're plain clothed. If he was to send a strong message by hitting a couple of those bases, and we know where they are, I think we would see more defections from the Artesh, which is the National Army, which is really a competitor with the IRGC and the Basij.
Thank you for highlighting that, Mr. Calmel. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we stay on this news. At least 648 protesters have been killed in the ongoing crackdown by Iranian security forces, according to the Norway-based Iran human rights group. The group warns that the actual toll could be much higher, while reports suggest over 6,000 may have died. The internet blackout in Iran is making verification very difficult. Meanwhile, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has praised pro-government rallies, calling them a warning to the United States. Khamenei has accused U.S. officials of relying on treacherous mercenaries and claimed the rallies foiled foreign enemies' plans. This crisis continues to unfold with global calls for action to protect the civilians. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Adrian Calmel. He's a terrorism scholar, joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Mr. Calmel, for staying with us. Now, we see many different narratives playing out here. What role does the state-led counter-narratives and pro-government rallies, if there are any actually, we don't know for sure, but are playing in shaping the international perception of this crisis right now?
I think international perception has you know, people have realized that these videos really aren't worth much, especially when they're coming from IRIB. They did have a person allegedly flying from a helicopter with his hair blowing in the wind. But the rest of his clothing was not moving, and there was no sound of the helicopter. It was an AI production. So they are going to project strength that the people are coming out in the streets. And if there are any actual protests, they will be the members of IRGC member families, the besieged and their families. They will be the ones out on the streets. But I saw some pictures today, people claiming that these were photos from today's rally, and it's dead of winter in Tehran, and there was foliage on the trees, and people were wearing short sleeve shirts. So I think people have blown through the narrative, and people see that it's not going to shape it. They understand that the regime brutalizes the people, and they've really seen it play out on TV since the Masa Amini murder. It really kind of heightened the world's awareness of the different methods and tactics the regime will use to deflect, deny, blame, and then kill the people.
Right. And, like in earlier discussion, Mr. Kalamel, you rightfully highlighted that Iranian government did this to themselves. They dug this hole for themselves. Is there a strong opposition there, or any other political party that can lead or that can take this the government if this Khamenei's government falls down?
Well, I will say there is one group that is not qualified, and that's the MEK. They may project themselves in DC and Brussels as being the rightful individuals to run the country, but they're not. What I will say about inside and outside Iran is that they have a very highly educated diaspora and people inside Iran who work these industries, who have degrees in political science, in history, international affairs, economics, you name it, but they don't rise up within the structure because there's an IRGC glass ceiling that they cannot break through. So there is plenty of people that can rebuild the society. Now, as far as a person that comes forward, you do hear his name chanted in the streets, and I do think that one person that people can rally around the flag is with the Crown Prince. I think he is the most recognizable opposition figure because the regime has killed off all opposition figures. So if it were up to me, they would look towards a constitutional monarchy. And the Crown Prince, he has not shown very much interest in politics now. In the past, I think right now he's showing his support for the people with the Maximum Support Act going through Congress. And then finally, I think he just wants to see a democratic transition over to a civilian government that isn't run by clerics and the military.
Right. We will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Adrian Kalamel for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Venezuelan opposition leader and a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Maria Corina Machado, will be meeting with President Donald Trump on 15th of January, the White House has confirmed. This visit follows the recent seizure of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro by U.S. forces in Caracas. However, Trump has refrained from endorsing Machado despite her movement claiming victory in the 2024 elections. Machado, who has received the Nobel Peace Prize last year, has expressed her gratitude to Trump for his actions against Maduro, even suggesting she might give him the Nobel Prize. But the Nobel Committee has clarified that the award is not transferable. Trump had earlier criticized Machado's decision to accept the Peace Prize, questioning her role in Venezuela's future. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Ms. Irina Zuckerman. She's a senior journalist, joins us live from New York. Thank you very much, Ms. Zuckerman, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, it's very hazy. Like, it's not it's not clear where exactly does Trump stand when he sees Machado. Is he pro Machado, or is he not? Is he neutral? Is he analyzing the situation? And what could be the reasons behind Trump's opinion of Machado?
Asking this question because at various points in time, it seems that Trump's Venezuela policy, broadly speaking, has been driven by various individuals within his administration. At one point, it's been Secretary Rubio. At different points in time, Stephen Miller and the CIA Director Ratcliffe appear to have more influence. So a lot of what's going on has been somewhat uneven, inconsistent, and even conflicting in terms of policy. And the transition process too suffers from this too many cooks in the kitchen sort of positioning. In terms of Machado, Trump at various points in time has been complimentary to her, particularly after she dedicated the Nobel Peace Prize to him, but at the same time, he appeared to be resentful of not getting the Nobel Peace Prize himself. At one point, he throws her out of the transition process altogether, even from having a consulting advisory position. The fact that he's meeting with her now is probably, at least in part, due to advice from his inner circle, but also from the pressure of coming up with some sort of a clear path forward, especially after Secretary Rubio came out and said that the current vice president is not a legitimate leader and committed the U.S. essentially to support of an election process. And Machado seems to be a well-positioned candidate to play a role in Venezuela's future, if not as its political leader, then potentially as someone with a very strong humanitarian advisory role, who has led and inspired a lot of activists and pro-democracy supporters, and has also played a unique role in unifying otherwise extremely polarized opposition, for which she deserves a lot of credit. Now, of course, she was not the winning party in the fraudulent elections last year. Gonzalez was that person. So it may be that ultimately, if the elections are held, the people of Venezuela will end up supporting someone with a more direct political experience. Regardless of that, however, having her involved in some capacity will lend the United States a great deal more credibility than focusing almost exclusively on back channels with the remaining regime figures, all of whom have been implicated in the very crimes that the administration accused Maduro of committing.
Right. And what do you think, what can we expect from the upcoming 15th of January meeting between them?
Well, if Machado plays it smart, she can potentially use this opportunity to build a very positive one-on-one relationship with President Trump, who is known from being far more gracious and welcoming and open-minded in person than when playing to large audiences. And we have seen that effect with then Mayor-elect Mamdani, certainly who's been much further apart from Donald Trump on policy issues than Machado has been. We have seen that with other critics and skeptics and media figures such as Bill Maher, who's had dinner with President Trump, but also with potential supporters like the new Prime Minister of Japan, with whom Trump has had a very positive meeting, which set off a very strong and positive tone for the relationship with the country. So it's entirely possible that this meeting may put aside whatever concerns Trump may have had with Machado over her potentially competing for influence or trying to overshadow him in the transition process. I don't think that she's aiming for that personally.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zuckerman, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Greenland. Greenland is pushing back hard against any idea of U.S. takeover, saying its defense must remain firmly under NATO, not under American ownership. The government of Greenland says all NATO members, including the US, share responsibility for protecting the strategically important Arctic territory, which is part of the Danish kingdom. It has clearly rejected US President Donald Trump's renewed claim that Washington must control Greenland to block Russian or Chinese influence. Adding to the tension, a senior Russian official has weighed in. Security Council Deputy Chief Dmitry Medvedev has claimed that Greenlanders could even vote to join Russia if the US delays, a remark widely seen as provocative. While Russia makes no territorial claim, it is closely watching the Arctic, where melting ice is opening new shipping routes and access to minerals. Meanwhile, a bipartisan group of US lawmakers led by Senator Chris Coons will be visiting Denmark this week as President Trump threatens a Greenland takeover. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ms. Irina Zuckerman. Thank you very much, Ms. Zuckerman, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how could this growing strategic competition of Arctic, and also what do you think, how is the situation escalating after US directly said, it's this is for countering in case of China and Russia's claims towards or effects towards Greenland takeover, when Russia and China were quiet about it, and now we saw Russian minister say some things.
Look, I think the United States has every right and reason to be concerned in no small part, because it has an agreement with Denmark since 1951 to defend Greenland, and it has a military base in Greenland for a reason. Russia and China indeed have been ramping up the competition with Western countries and not just the United States in the Arctic, and their presence around the strategic waterways near Greenland in the Arctic direction is indeed noticeable, and it's growing. That said, I think, unfortunately, President Trump played directly into Russian hands with the increasingly militant rhetoric concerning the acquisition of Greenland. Russia only started making the sort of provocative noises designed to actually bolster Trump's divisions with NATO after he's made pronouncements that Greenland would be U.S. property one way or another, and essentially willing to break up the NATO alliance, at least showing rhetorical willingness to do so in the recent days. Russia has been potentially inflaming this absolutely avoidable crisis for its own interests. It may very well be that the U.S. has absolutely no need to acquire Greenland in order to stop Russian and Chinese advances. In fact, President Trump has already ordered ships icebreakers to be built to advance U.S. interests in the Arctic. And of course, at any point, he can bolster the bases in Greenland and a U.S. naval presence as much as he wants to. No one has ever tried to limit U.S. presence. On the contrary, I think Denmark and others would be grateful if U.S. increased its presence. But let's keep in mind logistics. Russia is located closer to Alaska than U.S. is to Greenland. In fact, if U.S. should be concerned about Russia's positioning, it should be at least as much concerned about Russia's provocative moves near Alaska and its spy planes and spy ships that in the last few years have made their presence quite well known near U.S. shores, and the U.S. and Alaska is part of the U.S. unlike currently Greenland. Yes. So if there's any national security concerns, primarily they're here and not somewhere further away. In order to reach Greenland, additional U.S. ships need to travel around Canada just to get to that point. So clearly, in terms of immediate threats and immediate danger, our concerns with Russia and China, which also, by the way, has made incursions into U.S. territory through spy balloons and ships in the Pacific, they should be primarily here, and I have not seen either the Biden administration or the Trump administration put an end to these occasional appearances and or sanction these countries in any way for provocative behavior in the United States. I think Russia's play, however, is not about these long-term geopolitical concerns. I think they're much more about ensuring divisions and between NATO members that could distract from support for Ukraine, for instance, or for dealing with Russia's growing footprint, military footprint in Europe. Russia's hybrid warfare includes provocations of that sort, and of course, nothing would please Putin more than to have NATO break apart, because NATO has been the defense alliance against the growing Kremlin aggression and its hegemonic ambitions, and has the means to stop it, especially if the US is at the forefront of such an effort.
Thank you for highlighting it all out there for us, Ms. Zuckerman. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. A new commander has taken charge aboard the International Space Station as NASA confirms an unprecedented early crew return due to a serious medical condition. Command of the ISS has been formally handed over from U.S. astronaut Mike Finke to Russian cosmonaut Sergei Kudsverchikov, marking 25 years of continuous human presence in space. At the same time, NASA has announced that one unidentified crew, 11 astronauts and 3 crewmates will be brought back to Earth months ahead of schedule after doctors determined the condition could not be properly treated in the orbit. The medical issue is not believed to be work-related and details remain private. The multinational crew, originally set to return in May, has been in space since August, with planned spacewalks now affected by the early return. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.